today?
Kendrick Lamar.
So I obviously Super Bowl was yesterday, and I think most people watched it. But I have an interesting conversation. So in a group text this morning with a men's group I was in, uh, one guy said, "I didn't know any of the words, I didn't know any of the songs," and another guy said, "You know what? The NFL's pretty smart. They know for a sustainable business long term, they have to attract the next generation. And if anybody under I don't know if this is accurate, but they said anybody under the age 33 absolutely knows who Kendrick Lamar is. And they know their fan base over age 33 already is solidified." And I thought that was really interesting. And I laughed because obviously I'm over 33. And I did know who Kendrick Lamar was, and I did know some of his songs before that. But I thought, what's the business lesson here? And to me, if you're going to have a sustainable business long term, spanning different generations, are you strategic at figuring out how to be appealing or attractive to the next generation? What do you think?
Um, yes, and yes. I am well over 33, and I certainly know who Kendrick Lamar is. I think that we have to change. And so a lot of our articles that we're talking about in business today focuses just on that. That we'll be talking about how we're changing in real estate as well. So I think that they do look at their target audience and they do have to look at the next generation. But I think that that's with every Super Bowl that we've seen. It's been who's the top entertainer. So uh,
Yeah.
that's it.
I just think it was I thought it was a good performance. I just didn't I think I don't want to say his name because but I received a text and said there wasn't a guitar on stage. Is it really music if there's no guitar? And I said, you're out of touch.
Oh gosh, it's very much.
Uh, but I mean, I just think from a business standpoint, it was really strategic for the NFL. And I think it is a good lesson for all of us that, that first time home buyer may not be of out of your generation, but you better figure out how to attract it. And you better figure out how to appeal to it.
And communicate. And so what's interesting before, right after we go through the numbers and reading some of these articles, it's talking about some things that are kind of stale that we may be doing still as real estate professionals, how we can kind of jazz it up a little bit and be able to be more relatable because people are actually getting their information and making informed decisions in different ways than what we've done, even in the last 5 to 7 years.
Yep. And I guess we don't have to diss our competitors to do that like he did, but whatever. All right, moving on. Let's hit the numbers. I'm getting
At
it up
Franklin
here on the
Templeton, we're
screen.
always innovating. A leader in public and private markets, digital assets.
All right, I got sound coming from somewhere here. Nope. Hang on. One of the articles has sound. Sorry. All right. Fulton County. 933 or 913 active new listings in Fulton County hit the market. It was 925 the week before, but these are big numbers,
Yep.
especially for like the second week of February here. I think that's a really good sign as long as we sell them. 104 went under contract in the last 7 days. Last 4 weeks in a row, we've been triple digits in Fulton County. It's a little bit down from the 2 weeks before, but a lot up from what we were experiencing previously.
Mhm.
So spring market is certainly here. There's 276 properties pending in Fulton County as of this morning. That's a
Wow.
big number. Uh, and I'm assuming most of that'll close out in February. and on into March. So, man, we're starting to crank. I would like to just go back real quick if I can. So February 10th, if I scroll back to February 10th a year ago, they had what 129 go under contract and they had 275 pending. So 276 pending and 104 going under contract.
Yep,
Maybe a little bit off what it was last year, but last week was higher. So just perspective, right?
it is.
Closed 212. Good, bad. I think we're still lagging from some December lull, but it certainly is starting to build.
Mhm.
So those numbers look good. DeKalb County, 588 new active listings, big number as well. 76 active under contract, really good activity going on in DeKalb. I might have screamed a little much last night. My voice is scratchy, so give me a minute. 164 pending, which is big number, right? And then 120 closed out. So what do you see so far?
It's pretty, there's a small uptick, but it's pretty consistent. So very optimistic in terms of what's happening. The number that I'm focusing on though is the drastic drop both in Fulton and in Cobb from the week prior in expires. So that means that either we're taking them down, they're being relisted, but you're not seeing as many expired. So that number dropped off drastic. Well, last week was just a huge surge in both counties, which is interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, Cobb, let's look. Mhm. 459 new active inventory. So they've had 3 big weeks of new listings coming on, or 4 weeks. 94 went under contract, which is a high for them year to date. And then 168 are pending,
Yep.
which same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. There was a drop in expireds. This was end of the month expireds.
Totally.
So 36, 28, 24, 31, still quite a bit expiring on a weekly basis. And
It
then
is.
143 closed out. So Cobb actually had a good week in closings
It did.
compared to the other counties. But overall, look, we're bouncing a little bit around spring market, heat up. It's going to bounce, but overall, it certainly looks like the market is going
It's going.
for sure. All right, let's get into some crazy stuff. But before we do, what are the rates? We're at 7.03 this morning. That's down about a tenth of a point from where it was last week. So rates are moving in a positive direction. This is the national average. So if somebody was buying a house today, I think they could probably lock in 6 3/4, depending on their credit worthiness and all that stuff. And I think new construction is buying rates down even further than that. So um, even though the average is at 7, I think good credit, financial worthy people are getting high sixes in their locks with lenders right now. All right, so our friend Barbara Corcoran made a headline on Fox Business this morning that said she insists U.S. is still suffering through a difficult market, and her talking points. She said, "Sunny skies aren't shining across America's real estate market just yet. No one wants to move, and there are fewer houses to choose from at higher rates." What do you take in that?
She's talking about the interest, just the interest rates, just kind of what you shared. I think that there are people that are still holding out and thinking that 5% is, coming back. And so she's seeing the slowdown, but in terms across the nation. But what she did talk about that it has an uptick is the luxury market. And I know
Yeah.
we have another article that we'll be sharing with that, but the surge that they're seeing in the luxury market, although this was not optimistic, she did have some optimism that came down later in the article that talked about the luxury market. But I really just think, we're looking at mortgage rates moving down. But is this enough in order to make people move? And so for her perspective, she's not seeing that.
Yeah. I also think when you read something like this, it's national.
Correct.
And I think Atlanta, we've talked many times on here, is a little bit better of a market than the national news market. But I do agree that, look, right now, if you see, where's her talking about? Meanwhile, mentally, it affects the housing market because people are waiting for good news, and coming down a tenth of a point is not really good news. Going from 7 to 6.9, psychologically, that makes a difference. But with interest rates remaining high, what it really causes is fewer homes on the market, which just goes to show that the inventory is still a little bit of a challenge, even though we're on this call going, hey, look at all the new houses coming on the market. Look at all the new houses coming on the market.
And I think it's
Um,
back to your point that you mentioned is that Atlanta is a little different market. And so here's what this says to me. This is what our consumer is reading. We've got to give them what's happening here locally in Atlanta. And so we've got some good articles, I think, that would be supportive of that, particularly with a lot of companies that are moving here to Atlanta and expanding.
yeah. So this article, but the headline kind of makes it sound pretty negative, but it's in the details. So anxiety over mortgage rates, rent, and home prices begin to mount. And what they're talking about is inflation, which we typically haven't. Inflation was a hot topic there for a long time, and it hadn't been a hot topic for a while. But this conversation around tariffs is out there in the media, and it's affecting the consumer mentality a little bit. And they're getting anxious about inflation again, with a growing number of convinced that home prices, rent, and mortgage rates are headed up in the year ahead. So if you were at our industry update, we talked about how we don't believe prices are going backwards. We actually believe prices are going to be flat or slightly up in 2025. And I think the consumer, your typical buyers always asking themselves the question, can I get a deal? I mean, that is a age old thought process a buyer asks. So they're wondering, I read all this negative media or the housing market's down. And my guess is they are all asking you, can I get a deal? Can we negotiate right now? And the challenge with that is maybe somewhere, but by and large, it's probably no. And but that creates some confusion in the consumer mind. She's using, or they're using the word anxiety. I don't know that it's anxiety. I think it's just still keeping people from moving fast. Um, but the interesting thing I've been asking myself is this: what does this tariff conversation do to the real estate market? And if you're not aware, uh, inflation expectations soared after President Donald Trump announced on January 31st that he planned to impose tariffs on goods from China, Canada, and Mexico. But then there's a 30-day pause. So they're not actually instituted right now with Canada and Mexico. And there's a potential of it coming 30 days from now, but it actually was held up in court. But I keep asking myself, Obviously, residential resale is not directly affected by tariffs unless you have to do a remodel or some kind of updating. But what's the effect on new construction? So the National Association of Home Builders has warned that more than 70% of imported softwood lumber and gypsum used for drywall comes from Canada and Mexico, and that home builders will be facing a 40% duty on Canadian lumber if the proposed 25% tax tariff is actually added. So will we see pricing in new construction or builders slowing down new construction as a result? Potentially. I just don't know that it's going to affect our industry that much. But it's back to the headline of the article. Is it on people's minds? Yes. Is it anxiety? I don't know if that's the right word. Like, uh, we're about to do a remodel project at my house. That's the first thing my wife asked me is if these tariffs go in, does that mean the cost of our remodel is going to go up? And I said, I don't think so, but I don't know. Right.
Right.
Um, it's just out there in the mind space of the consumer.
Mhm. And I think that, when we're looking at affordability, we're not just talking about what is it going to cost, to build a home, but what is it just going to cost to live? So how does that affect, gas prices? I mean, eggs, $10 a carton right now, just from all the other things that are happening in our world. So I think, we plant these seeds, but again, it's our job as the real estate professionals to really talk about call to action, what's the immediate need? And there are some things that we're just not going to be able to control that.
Yeah. I was laughing yesterday because my wife said, hey, we got to go to the store. We're having people over for the Super Bowl. So I'm thinking we're running to the store to buy a few things, Toya, and $200 grocery bill later. And it makes me wonder, like, what percentage of our buyers and or sellers that sell and buy actually their life is set up paycheck to paycheck.
Mhm.
And if their life is set up paycheck to paycheck, this is a very big effect on them.
Mhm.
If they're not set up paycheck to paycheck, it probably is just a annoyance factor, right?
Correct.
But I think a chunk of consumers in America live paycheck to paycheck and are affected by the grocery bill, right?
Mhm. I would agree.
All right, this one's fun.
Yes.
So the 7 things that are dead in real estate. I agree with most. The first one's door knocking. So their argument is when the presidential election was going on, they had a lot of door to door canvassing. So it's kind of killed door knocking in the real estate industry. I don't know that I 100% agree, but I'm going to hold my opinion. What's yours?
So I found this article very interesting. As a matter of fact, it's probably going to be one of our topics at our team meetings because what he did do in this article is talk about things that are not getting the best results. So he's not saying that it's long gone. He's just saying there's a better way to do it. And I would agree with that because I do think that we've got to change. So remember, we were just talking about the Super Bowl and how they've strategically had to change in order to get that next generation. I do think that we have to be able to look at some of the practices that we've had and maybe pivot just a little bit in order for us to be able to get a better response rate. And that's what this article focuses on is how can you get, so they use that in the campaign strategy where they didn't see that door knocking was as effective. What they did see were podcasts, the social media, things of that nature, because that's where people are getting their information from just because it's faster. So I don't think that he's saying it's a hard no. He's just looking at all of the traditional ways that we've done in the past. And maybe people need to pivot a little bit because the results are not as effective.
Yep. And it's saying the losing party doubled down on the strategy that helped them win elections in the past of going door to door in swing states. Meanwhile, the winning party focused on podcast interviews and new media sources. Not political, it's just what's the business lesson inside of it, right?
Correct.
Um, all right, traditional just listed and just sold cards. If you haven't been in our industry for a length of time, this was a big thing for a long time. You took a listing, you mailed out postcards. You sold a house, you mailed out postcards. Um, I agree, they're dead. There's no return on that investment. Most people are pitch in the mail. It's just not effective tool these days. What
Right.
is effective is probably the same kind of conversation of what is the digital media version of that that is the consumer will pay attention to.
Yes. So I thought this was a great example. And here's the thing, if you just pause right, no, yep, go up. Did you hear about your neighbor? It is so interesting that was the tag or that was the thing that caught my eye because it's like, oh, what about my neighbor? Which neighbor? You know, that's that nosy neighbor mentality, but she goes right into what's happening. So I think it's just more or less, what's the message? Because I stand over my trash can ready to chunk anything that just looks like junk mail and what's going to be able to grab the attention. I think that there was a question Richard had. He says, I have a question, Brett. So
Hit it. What you got?
Thank you all for always delivering such good information. Um, I was and Brett, you always help me, keep a clear head, and I've shifted my mind of not going into, like a panic anxiety mode myself as an agent, but also being, actionable and seeing how I can take advantage of some of the data that comes out. Luke has, delivered the Atlanta market summary, and you all always do a good job of delivering this data. And based off of what I'm seeing, where it's longer days on market, more inventory. It Everything shows that hey, the market has slowed down, which allows us to market to our database of like, hey, for people who are on the fence, you know, it's better to take action now. And it could create some opportunities for us. But my question is the combination of all of these things, the tariffs, the things that you all are covering, how do you keep it in perspective of like how it doesn't reach a tipping point? Because, people, like you said, $200, at the grocery store, if you're in a good position, sure. But, the combination of it all, like, how do you keep it in perspective? Like, okay, it's not the end of the world, but adjustments do need to be made and made fast.
Honestly, it's money 101, Richard. It's do you have a budget? Do you stick to your budget? In your personal life, that one is a big lost art of financial management, one. And two, in business, do you track your spending and you track your return on investment? And don't just do things because you think it's the right thing to do. Do things and hold your money accountable and say, can I attribute a phone call from that postcard? Can I attribute an email from that postcard? Can I attribute a sale from that postcard? And long term, Mark put in there that it's definitely a long term strategy. I agree, and it's everything has to be held accountable
I,
for some kind of return on investment.
and Richard, that's such a great question. I think the other part that we have, the audience and the platform and the resources are to be able to bring that information to our consumers. So
Right.
are we teaching, workshops to where we're bringing in those, advisors that can help them with the budget, money
Mm,
management, things of that nature. So I think that there is an opportunity and there's a silver lining in anything. Um,
right.
so we've just got to be able to look around and say, okay, how can I be a resource to that consumer, knowing that this is affecting, this is a large question that people have, and it's money management 101. I would agree with Brett. And
Yeah.
bring
Okay.
to that.
And last part to that question, for the people who may be more well off, for our clients that are maybe more luxury, or they do have excess, where it's not going to affect them as much, but where would you say the opportunity of the moment is for them right now?
So one of the articles that's in here, and hopefully we'll have time to get to it, talks about really looking at, the 1 million and up. They are actually seeing huge success right now. This is the market right here, Atlanta luxury home market. Now, there is a skill set that goes with dealing with luxury homes, and that may be where you want to focus some of your time and energy, if, whoever doesn't have it. But
Right.
is an opportunity right there where we're seeing double digits and they are surpassing what's happening in our regular real estate market right now.
Perfect.
Which,
Okay.
because
Thank you.
I would argue, Toya, back to our earlier comment, their life is not set up paycheck to paycheck.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
they don't have a right in front of their face anxiety around what's going on with the market. Their
Correct.
life is more set up around the stock market, or I have a chunk of money in the market and it's down 20% or up 20%, where your paycheck to paycheck consumer is focused on their monthly budget and going, man, I don't know if I can take my rent payment of 2,500 a month and make a mortgage payment of 3,000, because that $500 is a big deal to me.
Mhm.
Does
And
that
can I
make sense?
That makes perfect sense. And there's one other piece that I would say for us to look at is part of that reason why we're seeing such high prices here, in particularly in the Atlanta market for luxury, is there are a lot of corporations that are expanding. So I say follow the money. Microsoft has invested 1.8 billion in a data center campus in Union City. So if you work the south side of town, or even if you don't, there are places right now that people are actually looking because they have this big project coming that they won't even finish it until 2032. So I think that we've got to look at the opportunities that are right here. We're in a great market in Atlanta, that we can look to see where are the trends coming, who's coming, where are they coming, and then where can I focus my efforts?
There you go. Well, let's get through this list real quick.
Yep.
So, unedited listing photos from an iPhone. I sure hope nobody's doing that. The three P's of marketing, which they say are place it in the MLS, place it in the yard, and pray. I agree these are dead. Not that don't do that. Obviously, we do that. But remember, we're coming out of a market where you could probably just put a house in the MLS and the activity was there to sell it. Well, the reality is most people need to put some energy and effort to having a very good marketing plan these days. And the talk point three P's are not enough. I agree. You need to have a killer marketing plan. Um, Blog post. I find this interesting. Uh, there was a period of time where people were writing blog articles like it was going out of style for SEO purposes. What I see more of now is a resurgence of vlog or video blogs. So interesting. I was poking around about buying um, a Airbnb rental cabin, and I was looking in Blue Ridge. I was looking in the Smoky Mountains. I was just poking around over the weekend, and I ended up talking to an agent uh, up there, Keller Williams agent, and she directed me to her video blog series, which literally was awesome. And I ended up watching all the videos. And it was how to analyze rental income. It was what are the do's and don'ts of buying real estate in that area. and they were short 3-minute video blogs about real estate in that area. And I was like, man, this is really good content. So I agree. I think the video blog content series is a thing. But the not print media, but the two-dimensional article blogs just don't seem to be as effective these days. Somebody's going to argue that, and I'm okay with that. I think with the addition of AI, people are trying to use AI to write content, and it's just going to diminish the whole organic SEO, find my website strategy that people were running with. Acceptance of unprofessional buyers agents. Yeah. I mean, if you were a listing agent in the multiple market offer we came out of, you were just choosing the best offer and dealing with whatever agent you got. When a market is not as hot, relationships matter, professionalism matters. People don't have to work with you in this market if you're not professional. And then the seventh one, Toya, waiting for interest rates to come down. We've talked about that a lot. They're just not coming down, guys. So that's a don't, right? Anything you'd add? We're at time, Toya, so I want to make sure we're respectful. What'd you hear today? What did we what are you taking away?
My biggest top point would be pivot in the way, reevaluate what we're doing, making sure we understand that we've got to get to reach the consumer a different way. And maybe some of the ways that we're reaching them, we may not be getting the biggest return on our investment. So just look at your approach and, pivot if necessary. If it's working, keep it going.
There you go. Any other questions? I'm going to put those videos in the chat for you, Vicky.
Yes. Awesome.
There you go.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, listen, I appreciate you guys attending. I trust you find value. Whether we answered your question on here or not, we still are a resource. Feel free to ask any questions. We want to be help you be that economist of choice.
Have an amazing and wonderful, exciting week, everybody.
And last notice, there's no industry update next week because of family reunion.
Awesome.
Later, guys.
Bye.
I'm hanging out so you can get those videos, Vicky.
Have a
All
good
right,
one.
I'll give you 30 seconds.
Got it. Thank you.
Bye, guys.